Before we start, I need a favor. Let me know in the comments what's been done right or wrong. This also helps me create better content for you all, and check out our Creepy Tales playlist. The videos with the most views, likes, and comments will form the channel. And now we begin. Chapter 1. The Beckoning Voices. The emergency call comes in at 6:47 a.m. about a missing hiker named Jennifer Walsh, but when Park Ranger Derek Moss calls out her name from the trailhead, 3 different voices answer him back from 3 different directions deep in the forest. The first voice sounds exactly like Jennifer, calling, "I'm here, I'm lost, please help me." The second voice also sounds like Jennifer, but it's coming from a completely different area, sobbing, "I fell and hurt my ankle, I can't move." The third Jennifer voice echoes from somewhere near the creek, screaming, "Something's wrong, something's following me, please hurry." Moss smiles as he adjusts his radio and reports back to dispatch. "I've made contact with the missing hiker," he says calmly. "She's disoriented but responsive. I'm tracking her location now." What dispatch doesn't know is that Jennifer Walsh has been dead for 3 days, her body decomposing in a ravine 2 miles from where any of those voices are calling, and Derek Moss is the one commanding her spirit to call out. An hour later, the Brennan couple arrives at the visitor center, worried about their missing friend Jennifer, who was supposed to meet them for lunch yesterday. "She's an experienced hiker," Tom Brennan tells Moss as his wife Sarah paces nervously, and Moss replied, "She wouldn't just disappear without calling." "Actually, we've located her," Moss replies with practiced concern. "She got turned around in the backcountry and injured herself, but she's conscious and giving us directions to her location. Why don't you folks come along? She might respond better to familiar voices." Moss leads the Brennans up the ridge trail, his radio crackling with Jennifer's voice every few minutes. "I can see the trail markers now," comes her clear, desperate plea, and Sarah Brennan responds, "Thank God she's okay." Jennifer continues, "I'm about a quarter mile east of marker 7, please hurry, I think I'm getting hypothermic." Sarah Brennan tears up at the sound of her friend's voice. "Thank God she's okay," she whispers, and Tom nods as he calls back, "Jennifer, we're coming, just hold on." What they don't hear is Moss whispering under his breath, his lips moving in silent commands that cause Jennifer's dead spirit to respond exactly as he directs. The dead are excellent puppets when you know how to pull their strings. "Turn left at the next fork," Jennifer's voice instructs through Moss's radio, and he dutifully guides the Brennans deeper into the forest. "I can hear you calling, you're getting closer." But as they hike further from the main trail, Sarah begins to notice something odd about Jennifer's radio transmissions. "Tom," she whispers urgently, "did you notice that Jennifer sounds different? Her voice keeps changing slightly." Tom listens more carefully to the next transmission. "I'm so cold," Jennifer's voice says, "but there's something hollow about it, like an echo of an echo. I can't feel my fingers anymore. I think something might be wrong with me." Something is wrong. Jennifer Walsh died of exposure 3 days ago, alone and terrified, calling for help that never came. Now her spirit belongs to Derek Moss, who can access all her memories, all her speech patterns, all her relationships, and use them to lure her friends to the same fate. "This way," Moss says, leading them off the marked trail entirely. "She says she can see us now, just through those trees." As they push through a dense thicket, Tom catches sight of movement ahead and calls out, "Jennifer, is that you?" A figure waves from behind a cluster of pine trees, definitely female, definitely wearing hiking gear similar to what Jennifer was last seen in. But when they reach the spot, nobody is there, and Jennifer's voice now seems to be coming from a different direction entirely. "Over here," she calls weakly, and Tom shouts back, "Where are you exactly?" Jennifer responds, "I tried to walk toward you but I fell again. I think my leg might be broken." Sarah spins around, trying to locate the source of the voice. "Jennifer, where are you exactly?" she shouts, and Tom adds, "Keep talking so we can follow your voice." That's when they hear the others. Male voices, elderly voices, children's voices, all calling out from different areas of the forest. "Help us!" comes a man's desperate cry, and an old woman calls, "We've been lost for days." A young boy sobs, "I'm scared," while a teenage girl begs, "Please don't leave us here." Moss watches the Brennans' faces as understanding begins to dawn. "Ranger," Tom says slowly, "how many people are missing in these woods?" "Oh, quite a few," Moss replies cheerfully, and Tom asks, "But don't worry. They all answer when I call them." He raises his voice and speaks a single word that sounds like no human language Sarah has ever heard, and suddenly the forest erupts with responses. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all calling out at once. Men, women, children, elderly hikers, young backpackers. A chorus of the dead that stretches through miles of wilderness. "Jennifer," Sarah whispers in horror, "that's not Jennifer at all." "Oh, it's definitely Jennifer," Moss corrects, and Sarah stammers, "Her spirit, anyway." Moss continues, "Along with everyone else who's ever died in my forest, and they're all very eager to meet you." The voices begin moving closer, rustling through the underbrush with footsteps that don't quite sound right. Through the trees, the Brennans catch glimpses of figures that look almost human but move with unnatural coordination, like marionettes controlled by a single puppeteer. "You see," Moss explains conversationally as the dead surround them, "when people die in these woods, their spirits don't just move on, they stay with me. And they remember everything about their lives, their relationships, their voices. Makes them very useful for recruiting new additions to our community." Jennifer's voice calls out one final time, now coming from directly behind them. "I'm sorry," she says, and for the first time, she sounds genuinely like herself, continuing, "I'm so sorry I brought you here. But he makes us do it. He makes us call to the people we love." Sarah turns around to see Jennifer's translucent figure standing just a few feet away, her hiking clothes torn and muddy, her face pale with death, but her eyes bright with supernatural awareness. "The living can't resist answering when the dead call for help," Moss says with satisfaction, and Jennifer's spirit adds sadly, "especially when the dead remember exactly how to sound like themselves, how to push all the right emotional buttons." Tom grabs Sarah's hand and starts backing away, but more spirits emerge from the forest around them. An elderly man in outdated hiking gear, a young woman with a backpack, a family of 4 who look like they died decades ago. All of them blocking every possible escape route. "Don't try to run," Jennifer's spirit advises sadly, and the elderly man's ghost warns, "We tried to run too, all of us tried." Jennifer continues, "But the forest is his now, and everyone who dies here becomes part of his collection." Moss produces a hunting knife from his belt, its blade gleaming with eager anticipation. "The best part about having an army of the dead," he tells the terrified couple, "is that they can share their memories of dying, so you'll know exactly what to expect." The spirits begin speaking in unison, their voices blending into a chorus of death that describes every possible way a person can die in the wilderness. And as their words wash over the Brennans like a tide of inevitable doom, Derek Moss prepares to add 2 more voices to his ever-growing collection of supernatural servants. Chapter 2. The Memory Chorus. The search and rescue team calls out for missing college student Amanda Chen at dawn, but when they shout her name across the valley, her voice answers back immediately with perfect clarity. "I'm here," she calls from somewhere near the waterfall. "I can see you guys. I'm stuck on a ledge about 30 feet down from the main trail." What makes Captain Rodriguez pause is how specific Amanda sounds. Not panicked, not confused like most lost hikers, but providing exact details about her location and condition. "I twisted my ankle pretty bad when I fell," her voice continues, echoing through the forest with unnatural precision, "but I managed to find some shelter under an overhang. There's a blue camping tarp someone left here that I'm using for warmth." Search team member Lisa Park turns to Rodriguez with a confused expression. "Captain," she whispers, "Amanda Chern has been missing for 3 days. How does she sound so calm and organized?" Rodriguez is wondering the same thing when Park Ranger Derek Moss emerges from the tree line, radio in hand and a concerned expression on his face. "I've been in contact with her since yesterday evening," Moss explains to the team, and Rodriguez replies, "That's excellent news." Moss continues, "She's been giving me detailed updates on her condition and surroundings. Very level-headed young woman." "Yesterday evening?" Lisa asks, checking her notes, and Moss nods as he responds, "Yes, around sunset." Lisa continues, "But her roommate said she never came home Sunday night. That would mean she's been missing since Sunday afternoon." "Mountain terrain can be disorienting," Moss replies smoothly, and Lisa questions, "Time becomes relative when you're injured and alone." Moss adds, "She probably lost track of how long she's been out there." Common with exposure cases. What the search team doesn't know is that Amanda Chen died Sunday night, her body currently decomposing at the bottom of a ravine 2 miles from where her voice is calling, and Derek Moss has been using her spirit to provide perfect intelligence about the search team's movements and motivations for the past 3 days. Amanda's voice calls out again, this time with even more specific details. "I can see 4 people with backpacks and rescue gear," she reports, and Rodriguez responds, "That's us, Amanda, we're coming to get you." Amanda continues, "The tall man with the beard must be Captain Rodriguez. My roommate said she called him specifically about my case." Rodriguez stops walking and stares at his radio in confusion. "How does she know who I am?" he asks Moss, and Moss shrugs as he replies, "Probably heard your name on the radio chatter." Rodriguez presses, "But we haven't been using names over the radio for security reasons." "Maybe her roommate described you when she filed the missing person report," Moss suggests, but Lisa is already checking her notes again. "Captain," Lisa says slowly, "Amanda's roommate never met you. She filed the report with Deputy Martinez at the local station, not with our search unit." That's when Amanda's voice provides information that makes the entire team freeze in place. "Lisa's wearing a blue jacket today," Amanda calls out conversationally, and Lisa gasps, "She's right, but how can she see me?" Amanda continues, "And there's a new guy with you, tall, blonde hair, probably mid-20s. Must be Jake Morrison from the volunteer unit." Jake Morrison stares at his teammates in shock. "I didn't sign up until this morning," he whispers urgently, and Rodriguez nods as he replies, "The paperwork isn't even processed yet." Jake continues, "There's no way a missing hiker could know I'm here. No way she could know my name." Moss maintains his calm demeanor, but his hand drifts toward the strange bone charm hanging from his belt, the same charm that allows him to access the memories and knowledge of every spirit in his supernatural army. "Amanda's been observing the search efforts," he explains, though his voice carries a subtle edge now, and Rodriguez asks, "Observing from where?" Moss responds, "She mentioned seeing helicopter flights yesterday, probably spotted your team during reconnaissance." "We didn't fly any helicopter reconnaissance," Rodriguez states flatly, and Lisa adds, "The weather's been too cloudy for air support." Rodriguez continues, "And even if we had, there's no way she could have seen individual team members from that distance." Amanda's voice cuts through their confusion with more impossible knowledge. "Captain Rodriguez has a scar on his left hand from a climbing accident in Colorado," she says cheerfully, and Rodriguez stares at his gloved hand in horror as he responds, That's not in any of my personnel files." Amanda continues, "And Lisa's afraid of heights, which is why she always volunteers for ground-based searches instead of rappelling operations." Lisa backs away from Moss instinctively. "I've never told anyone about my fear of heights," she whispers, and Jake nods as he adds, "Not even my family knows about that." Lisa continues, "How could a missing college student know personal details about our psychological profiles?" That's when they hear the other voices joining Amanda's impossible chorus. An elderly man calls out Rodriguez lost that climbing partner in Colorado. That's why he became so focused on search and rescue work, and a young boy's voice adds, "Lisa's father died in a mountain climbing accident when she was 12. That's where the height phobia started. Jake pulls out his sidearm as more voices emerge from the forest around them. Jake's girlfriend left him last month, comes a teenage girl's voice, and an adult woman adds, she said he cared more about rescue work than their relationship. The teenage voice continues, he's hoping that saving people will help him feel worthy of love again. This is impossible, Rodriguez whispers as dozens of voices begin sharing intimate details about each team member's personal history, family relationships, psychological vulnerabilities, and deepest fears, and Moss smiles as he responds, "Oh, it's very possible when you have the right resources." He speaks a word in that same inhuman language the Brennan couple heard, and suddenly the forest erupts with the voices of every person who has ever died in these woods. Men, women, children, hikers from decades past, all of them sharing memories and knowledge they couldn't possibly possess about the living people standing before them. You see, Moss explains as his army of the dead surrounds the search team, when people die in my forest, their spirits don't just remember their own lives. They become connected to a larger network of knowledge. They can access information about anyone who enters these woods, dig through memories and relationships and histories like reading an open book. Amanda's spirit materializes beside the waterfall, translucent but clearly visible, wearing the same hiking clothes she died in 3 days ago. "I'm sorry," she tells the terrified search team, and Rodriguez stammers, "We came here to help you." Amanda continues, "But when you're dead, you have to do what he tells you. And he told me to learn everything about you before you arrived." The dead make excellent intelligence gatherers, Moss says with satisfaction, and Lisa asks, they can observe the living world, access memories through supernatural connection, share information across the spirit network. Moss adds, by the time potential victims enter my forest, I already know everything I need to manipulate them perfectly. Rodriguez tries to reach for his radio, but Jake's spirit voice calls out, he's going to try to call for backup. The radio frequency is 147.3, and there are 6 officers stationed at the base camp who will respond within 12 minutes. How do you know our radio protocols? Rodriguez demands, and Amanda's ghost replies sadly, the dead know whatever we need to know. Moss can access any information that serves his purposes through our connection to the spirit realm. More ghosts emerge from the trees around them, dozens of previous search and rescue workers who died trying to find missing hikers in this forest, all of them sharing their professional knowledge and experience to help Moss hunt their living colleague. Every search team that's ever come looking for my victims becomes part of my collection, Moss explains as he produces his hunting knife, and a dead park ranger adds, we remember our training, our procedures, our weaknesses, all of it becomes available for future hunts. The spirits begin speaking in unison, their voices blending into a chorus of accumulated knowledge that describes every possible escape route, every radio frequency, every backup protocol the search team might attempt to use. And as the dead close in around them with perfect coordination, Derek Moss prepares to add 4 more voices to his ever-growing army of supernatural intelligence gatherers. Chapter 3: The Reunion. The Hartley family stands at the edge of Whispering Pines Trail, calling desperately for their missing son Michael, who disappeared while hiking alone a week ago. When they shout his name across the valley, his voice answers back immediately with the kind of detail that makes his mother's heart soar with relief. "Mom, Dad, I'm okay," Michael calls from somewhere deep in the forest, and Mrs. Hartley sobs, "Thank God you're alive," as he continues, "I'm stuck in a cave system about 2 miles northeast of the main trail. I can see daylight through a crack above me, but the opening is too narrow to climb out." What fills his parents with hope is how much their son sounds like himself. Not just his voice, but his speech patterns, his sense of humor, even his tendency to provide overly detailed explanations when he's nervous. "I've been surviving on water that drips from the cave ceiling," Michael explains, and Mr. Hartley responds, "That's smart thinking, son." Michael continues, "And I found some old emergency supplies someone left down here. Protein bars that are probably expired, but they're keeping me going. We're coming to get you, Mrs. Hartley calls back, her voice breaking with emotion, and Michael replies, "Be careful, Mom. The terrain gets really rocky about a mile in, and there are some loose stones that could cause a slide." That's when Park Ranger Derek Moss emerges from the visitor center, his expression perfectly calibrated to convey professional concern mixed with cautious optimism. "Mr. and Mrs. Hartley," he greets them, and Mr. Hartley turns eagerly as he responds, "Ranger, we just heard from our son." Moss nods as he says, "Excellent. I've been coordinating with him since early this morning." "Since this morning?" Mrs. Hartley asks, wiping tears from her face, and Moss confirms, he managed to get a weak signal on his emergency radio around dawn. Mrs. Hartley continues, "Why didn't you call us immediately?" Moss explains, "I wanted to confirm his location and assess the rescue difficulty before getting your hopes up. Cave rescues can be complicated. What the Hartley family doesn't know is that their son Michael died of hypothermia 4 days ago, his body currently frozen in a deep ravine where his spirit can watch his parents' desperate search efforts, and Derek Moss has been using Michael's ghost to orchestrate the perfect family reunion scenario." Michael's voice calls out again, this time with the kind of personal details that convince his parents this is really their son. "Dad, remember you promised to teach me that advanced climbing technique when I got back," he says, and Mr. Hartley smiles through his worry as he responds, "Absolutely, and we'll start with proper anchor placement." Michael continues, "And Mom, I've been thinking about what you said about changing my major. Maybe you're right about environmental science being more practical than philosophy." Mrs. Hartley exchanges a glance with her husband. "Ranger," she says slowly, that's exactly the conversation we had the night before he left. How could he remember such specific details if he's been trapped in a cave for a week? Stress and isolation can make certain memories more vivid, Moss explains smoothly, though his hand drifts toward the bone charm at his belt, and Mr. Hartley nods as he says, "Trauma sometimes sharpens recollection of important moments." Moss adds, "He's probably been thinking about home constantly during his ordeal." But as they hike deeper into the forest following Michael's voice, Mrs. Hartley begins to notice other sounds echoing through the trees. "Help us," comes an elderly woman's voice, and a young man calls, "We're lost too." Mrs. Hartley stops walking as she asks, "Ranger, how many people are missing in these woods?" "Oh, just a few," Moss replies casually, but Michael's voice cuts through their conversation with more impossible knowledge, and the young man's voice adds, "Mom, the ranger is being modest. There are lots of us out here." Michael continues, "There's Mrs. Patterson from our old neighborhood. Remember her? She went missing during that hiking trip last spring." And Mrs. Hartley gasps, "Mrs. Patterson? But we went to her memorial service." Michael's voice responds, "And there's Tommy Rodriguez. He was in my advanced chemistry class. He disappeared during spring break." Mr. Hartley pulls out his phone to check local missing person reports, his face growing pale as he scrolls through months of unsolved cases. "These people," he whispers to his wife, "all these names Michael is mentioning, they're all real missing persons from the past year." "Michael," Mrs. Hartley calls out with growing unease, "how do you know about these other missing people?" "We talk," Michael replies simply, and Mrs. Patterson's elderly voice adds, "We keep each other company out here. Share stories, memories, experiences from our lives." That's when the voices begin overlapping, creating a chorus of the missing that knows impossible details about the Hartley family's personal history. "Michael told us about your anniversary trip to Yellowstone," comes Tommy Rodriguez's voice, and Mrs. Patterson adds, "and about how you met at that college poetry reading." Tommy continues, "Such a romantic story, love at first sight during a discussion of Robert Frost." Mrs. Hartley grabs her husband's arm. "We never told Michael that story," she whispers urgently, and Mr. Hartley nods as he responds, "He was never interested in hearing about how we met." Mrs. Hartley continues, "And the Yellowstone trip was before he was born. There's no way he could know those details. Moss watches their growing realization with satisfaction. Family bonds can be surprisingly strong, he observes, and Mrs. Hartley asks, "What do you mean?" Moss explains, sometimes missing people develop enhanced intuition about their loved ones. Stress and isolation can heighten emotional connections. But Michael's voice provides information that makes both parents freeze in terror. "Dad, you never told me about the affair," he says conversationally, and Mr. Hartley's face goes white as he stammers, "What affair?" Michael continues, "The one you had 10 years ago with your secretary. Mom forgave you, but you both agreed never to discuss it around me." Mrs. Hartley stares at her husband in shock, then at the radio where their son's voice is revealing family secrets that absolutely nobody else knows. "Michael," she whispers, "we never, how could you possibly?" "The dead know everything," comes a new voice. Michael's voice, but different somehow, colder and more distant, and Mrs. Patterson's spirit adds, "When you die in these woods, you become part of something larger." Tommy Rodriguez's ghost continues, a network of souls that can access memories, thoughts, relationships, everything that makes the living vulnerable. More voices join the impossible chorus, dozens of missing hikers, all of them sharing intimate details about the Hartley family's marriage, finances, health concerns, and deepest secrets. Information that only family members should know, spoken by the spirits of strangers who died in this forest. "This is impossible," Mr. Hartley whispers, and Moss smiles as he responds, "Oh, it's very possible when you understand how death works in my forest." He speaks that inhuman word again, and suddenly the trees around them fill with translucent figures. Men, women, children, elderly hikers. All of them looking exactly as they did when they died, all of them staring at the Hartley family with eyes that reflect supernatural knowledge. Michael's spirit materializes directly in front of his parents, wearing the same hiking clothes he disappeared in, his face pale with death but his expression warm with genuine love. "I'm sorry," he tells them, and Mrs. Hartley sobs, "Oh God, Michael, you're—" Michael continues, "I'm dead, Mom. I died 4 days ago, alone and scared, calling for you until my voice gave out." "But we heard you," Mr. Hartley says desperately, and Michael's ghost nods sadly as he responds, "He makes us call to the people we love, uses our voices and memories to bring families together." Michael adds, "The dead can't resist his commands, and the living can't resist answering when their loved ones call for help." Mrs. Patterson's spirit approaches with grandmotherly concern. "I called to my grandchildren," she explains gently, and Tommy Rodriguez's ghost adds, "I called to my girlfriend, she came looking for me just like you came looking for Michael." Mrs. Patterson continues, "We all become part of his collection eventually, families who love each other too much to abandon hope." The beautiful thing about family bonds, Moss says as he produces his hunting knife, is that they make people so predictable, so willing to ignore obvious warning signs when someone they love might be in danger. Michael's spirit reaches toward his parents with translucent hands. "He's going to kill you," he warns them, and Mrs. Hartley cries, "Then we'll be together again," as Michael shakes his head sadly and responds, "You'll be his servants, forced to call to other families, to lure other people into the same trap using your voices and memories." The army of dead family members surrounds the Hartleys as Moss prepares to add 2 more voices to his collection of supernatural servants who understand exactly how to exploit the bonds between loved ones. And somewhere in the growing chorus of the dead, Michael prepares to use his parents' voices to call their relatives and friends into the same forest that has claimed 3 generations of victims who answered when the dead called their names. Chapter 4. The Bone Garden. It began 15 years ago when rookie park ranger Derek Moss fell through a concealed sinkhole while tracking illegal campers in the deepest section of the forest. The ground collapsed beneath his feet, sending him tumbling 30 feet down into a hidden cavern that shouldn't have existed according to any geological survey of the area. When he regained consciousness in the darkness below, His flashlight revealed something that made his mind struggle to process what he was seeing: thousands of human bones arranged in intricate patterns across the cavern floor, forming geometric designs that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. At the center of this bone garden sat an ancient totem carved from what appeared to be a single human skull, its surface covered in symbols that predated any known written language. The skull's empty eye sockets glowed with a sickly green phosphorescence that cast dancing shadows across the surrounding bone formations, and when Moss approached it, despite every instinct screaming at him to flee, he could hear whispers echoing from within the carved bone surface. "Lost Ranger," came voices that sounded like wind through empty ribcages, fallen into the resting place of the forgotten, standing before the bone weaver totem that has waited centuries for someone with the proper sensitivity. Moss should have climbed back up to the surface immediately, should have reported his discovery to the authorities, should have done anything except reach out and touch the ancient skull totem. But the whispers promised him power beyond imagination, authority over life and death itself, dominion over the boundary between the living world and whatever lay beyond. 15 years later, Derek Moss stands in that same hidden cavern as his latest victims join the ever-growing collection of bones that fuel his supernatural abilities. The Hartley family's remains have been carefully arranged in the bone garden's expanding pattern, their spirits now bound to his will through the ancient compact he made with the totem that first night. "Faithful servant," comes the voice of the bone weaver totem, speaking through the combined consciousness of every soul who has died in this forest across centuries of accumulated death. 15 years of dedicated harvest, 15 years of feeding the bone garden with fresh spirits, 15 years of expanding our influence through the voices of the dead. Moss kneels before the skull totem, as he has every few months since his initial fall, reporting his activities to the ancient intelligence that transformed him from ordinary human into something far more powerful and infinitely more dangerous. The cavern around him has changed dramatically over the years, grown larger and more complex as each new death adds to its supernatural architecture. The modern world presents new opportunities, Moss reports to the glowing skull, and the totem responds, "Explain these opportunities, servant." Moss continues, "Cell phone technology allows me to track potential victims before they even enter the forest. Social media provides detailed psychological profiles I can exploit through my spirit army." The bone formations pulse with pleased energy as the totem processes this information. Adaptation ensures survival. The ancient intelligence agrees, and Moss nods as he says, "Those who serve the bone garden must evolve with changing times." The totem adds, "while maintaining dedication to our eternal purpose." Through his supernatural bond with the totem, Moss can feel its vast consciousness extending through underground root systems that connect to other bone gardens across the continent, part of a network of ancient sites where similar artifacts have been collecting souls for millennia. He is just one harvester among dozens, each tending their assigned territories, each feeding spirits to totems that grow stronger with every accumulated death. The Hartley family provided exceptional nourishment. Moss continues his report, and the totem pulses brighter as it responds. Elaborate on this assessment. Moss explains, their family bonds were unusually strong, the parents' love for their son, the son's guilt about disappointing them, the complex emotional dynamics I could exploit through supernatural manipulation. Family-based harvesting is the totem's preferred feeding method, the reason it encourages its servants to target groups with strong emotional connections. The terror generated when family members are forced to betray each other through supernatural compulsion provides the richest spiritual energy, sustaining the ancient intelligences that inhabit the bone gardens. And what of future expansion? The totem inquires, its consciousness probing Moss's memories for strategic planning, and Moss responds, "I've identified several promising targets." He continues, "There's a summer camp that brings hundreds of children into the forest each year, a hunting lodge that hosts family reunions, multiple hiking clubs that organize group expeditions." The skull's eye sockets flare with anticipatory hunger as it processes these possibilities. Mass harvesting events, it muses, and Moss confirms, exactly, instead of targeting individual families, I could orchestrate scenarios that claim dozens of victims simultaneously. The totem's satisfaction radiates through their connection like cold sunlight. 15 years of faithful service have transformed Moss into something beyond human comprehension, a creature that exists primarily to feed an ancient hunger while retaining just enough of his original personality to understand the magnitude of what he's become. There is a new development, the totem announces, and Moss feels the ancient intelligence focusing on him with unusual intensity, saying other servants across the network have reported increased resistance from human authorities. The totem continues, government agencies that employ supernatural consultants, religious organizations that actively hunt entities like myself, indigenous groups that remember the old warnings about bone gardens. This information concerns Moss deeply. For centuries, the bone gardens have operated in the shadows of human awareness, dismissed as folklore by rational minds while continuing their harvest of souls. If that protective ignorance is eroding, it could threaten the entire network. What are your instructions? Moss asks, though he suspects he already knows the answer, and the totem responds immediately, acceleration. The age of subtle harvesting approaches its end, the ancient intelligence explains, and Moss nods as he says, if humanity develops the ability to recognize and combat our influence. The totem continues, we must gather as much spiritual energy as possible before that capability fully manifests. Moss understands the implications perfectly. Instead of claiming victims gradually over years, he'll need to orchestrate mass death events. Instead of careful psychological manipulation, he'll need to embrace direct supernatural warfare. Instead of hiding behind the facade of helpful park ranger, he'll need to reveal his true nature as harvester of souls. The bone garden can support expanded operations, he confirms to the glowing skull, and the totem pulses with agreement as he continues, there are several locations where I could eliminate large groups simultaneously. Summer festivals, camping events, organized expeditions that bring hundreds of people into my territory. Ancient power flows into him through their connection, abilities far beyond anything the totem has granted him in 15 years of service. The capacity to animate the bone garden itself, to raise an army of skeletal servants from the accumulated remains, to project his necromantic influence across vast distances without requiring proximity to individual victims. And if human authorities investigate directly? Moss asks, and the totem's response carries cold amusement as it says, then they will provide the most nourishing spirits of all. The skull continues, fear enhanced by professional training and supernatural knowledge, such terror could sustain the bone garden for decades. Moss rises from his kneeling position as the totem's enhanced power settles into his transformed physiology. 15 years of faithful service have prepared him for this moment, when gradual soul harvesting gives way to supernatural warfare, when the ancient compact between human and inhuman finally reveals itself to a world unprepared for the truth about what lies beneath the forest floor. The age of concealment ends now, the totem declares as bone formations throughout the cavern begin to animate with malevolent purpose, and Moss responds, let humanity discover what has been feeding on their dead for millennia. The skull's eyes blaze with terrible light as it adds, let them understand that some hungers are too ancient and too patient to ever satisfy. Moss walks back toward the surface world with abilities that will transform him from hidden predator into an unstoppable force of supernatural destruction, ready to begin harvesting souls on a scale that will feed the bone garden's endless appetite while teaching humanity that their deepest fears about what lurks in dark places have always been horrifyingly accurate.